Hello and welcome to math. Today we're going to learn about slope-intercept form. All right, so slope-intercept form, it's super important in math, especially in algebra. Next year when you're in algebra, you're going to use slope-intercept form a ton. Okay, so the more you know about it now and the more you practice with it now, the more prepared you will be next year when you're in algebra. Okay, so slope-intercept form, we learned about slope last class. Slope-intercept form is using your slope, remember, which is your rise over your run, and another thing called the y-intercept, all right? And the equation is y equals mx plus b, okay? And then the m in the equation stands for your slope. That's your slope, okay? And the slope, remember, is your rise over run. And right here, it's circled in red, right? So I have this red here. That's our m. So our m here equals 2. Another way of writing this, like if I was going to write 2 as a fraction, I could rewrite this as 2 over 1, which means that my rise is 2 and my run is 1. So what that means is I'm going to go up 2 and over 1, and that's going to get me to my next point. If I was going to go from this point to this point up here, I would do the same thing. I would go up 2 and then over 1. So that's the slope. Slope does not change between 2 points on a line. Okay, so the next thing is a y-intercept, and that's the b here. So you see that plus 1? That plus 1 is the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. All right, so the y-axis, remember, is this vertical axis, is the one that goes up and down, right? And I see it crosses right here at positive 1. And that's where that plus 1 is, right? So that is my y-intercept. And the y-intercept is the b in y equals mx plus b. Okay? So there's two parts you need to know for slope-intercept form. It's y equals mx plus b, where the m is the slope and the b is the y-intercept. All right, now these questions here have an equation, right? And then it says, what's the m, what's the b? Okay, so y equals mx plus b. So m is our slope, and then remember, that's attached to the x. It doesn't include the x, but it's the number with the x. So this right here, this negative 1/3, that is my slope. That's my slope, negative 1/3. All right, the b is the number that's being added or subtracted at the end. So you see how this one has a -4? So that means my b is a -4. That means when I start my graph, which we're going to do here in a second, I'm going to start at -4. Okay? This one, it gave me the m and the b, and I have to write it as an equation. So remember, it's y equals mx plus b. So instead of writing m, I'm going to write what m equals 7. So this will be y equals 7, and then it'll be x. And then my b is a 5. It's a positive 5, so I'm going to write a plus 5. So it'll be y equals 7x plus 5. Go ahead and pause the video and try these 4 down here on your own, doing exactly what we just did here. Unpause it when you're done to check your work. Okay, hopefully you paused the video and hopefully you did the work and hopefully it looks something like this. Okay, so this first one, 3 is my slope, or you could write it as 3 over 1, because remember, all whole numbers you write over 1. 3 is your rise, the 1 is your run. And then this -5 is my y-intercept. -5 is my y-intercept. This one you may or may not have known, right? So when there's no number in front of a variable, we assume that there's a 1. So this says -x. So what it really means is this really means it's -1x. So that means my slope is -1, or you could write it as -1 over 1. My rise is -1, which means I would go down 1. And then my run is 1. I would go over 1. And then I have a plus 6, so that means my y-intercept is 6. Same thing here. This has a 1 for the slope. So you could write it as y equals 1x minus 3, but this is the most common way and the most simplified way you would see it, is they don't write the 1 when there's a 1. So it would just be y equals x minus 3. This one that says m equals 1/2 and b equals -5, my equation would be y equals 1/2 x minus 5. Okay? So that's slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Your m equals your slope. Your b equals your y-intercept. Okay, so how do we graph an equation? All right, so when you're given an equation in slope-intercept form, in y equals mx plus b form, the first thing you have to do is you have to identify your slope and you have to identify your y-intercept. That's the two most important parts, right? So first thing you want to do is you want to plot your y-intercept on the y-axis. So remember, your y-intercept is the b, right? And the way I remember this is the b, that's the y-intercept, that's where you begin. That's where you begin. So let's look at this one here. So I have y equals 2x plus 3. This plus 3 is my b. So that is my b. That's where I'm going to begin. So I'm going to begin my graph on 3 on my y, and I'm going to put a dot. That's going to be my first dot. Okay? So my next thing is I got to find my slope. Well, my slope is my m. It's the number that's attached to the x there. It's the number that's the coefficient of the x. So my slope here is 2, or you could write it as 2 over 1, right? Now I got to plot some points. Ideally, you want to get 3 points to make a line. So that way it shows a good trend, okay? You want to get 3 or more. I could say that. 3 or more points to get a good line. But ideally, you want 3, okay? So what I do is I start with my y-intercept. That's where I begin. I start on my 3, and then my slope is 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up 2 lines, over 1 line, and then I'm going to put a point. All right, I can't go up 2 and over 1 again because I don't have enough room on this graph. But what I can do is go the complete opposite direction. I can go down 2 and to the left 1 and put a point there, because that's still going to keep my trend line of this going positive, going up, right? Positive lines go up from left to right, and this is a positive slope. That's a positive 2, so I know it has to go up from left to right. Okay? And then at the end, these lines go on forever. So we want to put arrows on the end because they can go forever in each direction. All right, let's do the next one. Next one says y equals negative 2x plus 6. So my first thing here is I want to find my y-intercept. That's where I want to begin. So that's my b. So my y-intercept here is 6. And 6 of my y-intercept is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, very up top. That's where I'm going to begin. I'm going to start right there. So now what's my slope? My slope is negative 2. So I could write negative 2. And remember, negative 2 is really over 1. So that means I'm going to go down 2 over 1. So from my y-intercept point, I'm going to go down 2 points and to the right 1 point. Down 2 lines, to the right 1 line. And you can do this for as many times as you want. You can fill up the whole graph, right? As long as you get at least 3 points, though, you're usually pretty good. But while we have it, might as well just do the whole thing here. And you can see this is a good line here. And it's going down from left to right. It's going down from left to right. So I know that this is a negative line, which makes sense because this is a negative slope. So that's what I want, right? So there is my graph for y equals negative 2x plus 6. All right, my last one here, I have to find my b, my y-intercept. That's where I begin. So I see it's 3/4 x minus 4. So that means minus 4 is my b. That's where I'm going to begin. So I'm going to begin on negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my b. I'm starting right there. All right, and my slope is 3 over 4. 3/4 is my slope. So, and it's positive, so that means I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3 lines, and over 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to put a dot right there. To find my next dot, I'm going to do the same thing. Up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my next dot. And then I connect my dots and I make my line. There's my line. And then I want to make sure I add arrows on the end because these lines go on forever and ever in each direction. Okay, so when you're ever given an equation in slope-intercept form, you want to make sure you find your slope and your y-intercept. You want to start with your y-intercept. That's the b. That's where you begin. So you begin on the y-intercept. That's going to be your first point. From that point, you use your slope to find your next points. And then you connect your dots and make a line. All right, what if the graph is already given to you and they want you to write an equation? All right, so they say, what's the equation of this line? Well, we can do that now because we know slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So remember, we want to find the y-intercept first. That's where we begin. That's our b, right? It's also the easier one to find. So you just look to see where it crosses your y-axis. Your y-axis is the one that goes up and down, the vertical axis. I see it crosses the y-axis right here at negative 2. So my y-intercept is negative 2. So now I got to find my slope. So my slope, I got to find another good point. So another good point would be like this point here. It's where it goes right through the grid marks, where it goes on 2 lines, a vertical line and a horizontal line. This would not be a good point. That's a bad point because that's like in the middle between 2 lines. You can't really count to that, right? So now I got to figure out what my slope is. So how can I get from this point to that point? What's my rise over my run? Well, I see I have to go up 1, 2 blocks. So I'm going up 2. And I'm going over 1 block. I'm going over 1. And this is a positive line, so I got to make sure my slope is positive. So my slope here is 2 over 1. Or you can simplify that to just be 2. So what's my equation? My equation is always going to be y equals, but instead of m, I'm going to write my slope because slope is m in my equation. So it'd be 2x, and then my b is negative 2, so I write minus 2. And that's the equation for this line over here. All right, let's do one more line here. Here's my equation, here's my graph. And it wants me to write the equation of that line. First thing I want to do, remember, is I want to find my y-intercept because that's where I begin. That's my b. So where does it cross my y? I see it crosses right here. Crosses right there. And what is that at? That's at 1, 2. So my y-intercept here is positive 2. Now I got to find my slope. So remember, my slope, I got to find a good point that goes through two sets of lines, a vertical line and a horizontal line. So that's a good point there. This is a good point there, right? So there's actually lots of good points on this one. There's a good point there, right? Doesn't matter which two. You get the same answer. So now we got to find our rise over run to find our slope. So let's see here. How many down and over do I have to go from this point to this point? Well, I have to go down 1. So that would be -1. I went down. And I had to go over 1. So that'd be 1. So my slope is -1 over 1. Well, -1 over 1 just means -1. So what's my equation? My equation is y equals, I'm not going to write m, I'm going to write my slope, -1, and then I write my x, and then my y-intercept, my b, is 2, and it's positive, so I put +2. All right, remember, if it's a 1 in front of a variable, they don't usually write it, so the way you most likely see this one would be y equals -x plus 2, and then that would be my equation. These two equations mean the same thing, except this one is the one that they usually write it as. They don't usually write the 1 when it's the coefficient. They usually just leave that off because a number that's next to a variable means multiply. So this means -1 times x. Well, when we times something by 1, it doesn't change it, right? Like 1 times 5 is still 5. So they don't write the 1 there. That's why they don't write it, okay? So whenever you have -1, this is the way you usually see it. Okay, well, that's slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. The m in your equation is your slope. The b in your equation is your y-intercept. B means begin. You always begin on your y-intercept, and then you use your slope to find your other points. If you ever have any questions, please ask a teacher, and I'll catch you next time.